Hi everyone, Dr. Nemechek here, and I want to go over a case of autism and how well kids can recover using our protocol, some of the variations you have to do to get the inflammation down. Now, so our approach to autism and developmental issues or developmental issues alone in children is to just simply reduce inflammation in the body, and thereby when you do that, these natural repair mechanisms in the brain are able to start pruning the brain again and reversing developmental delay, starting to repair some of the injuries that are causing constipation and hyperactivity and the anxiety and aggression and poor focus and all that kind of stuff. So we don't directly try to fix the brain. We focus on reducing inflammation to get the brain to fix itself. So this is a young boy named Yusuf. When we saw him, he was 8, but around the age of 5, the parents had started the protocol using fish oil and olive oil and inulin. Now, they had kind of an awakening where initially he was a little more alert, a little more responsive, seemed more aware what was going on, but still very limited speech. And but they saw a positive effect there. So he's on inulin, fish oil, and olive oil. That's in 2019. They do that for about a year and a half, and they're realizing there is no other gains here. And so they came and saw us in June of 2021. At that point, we were typically using 10 days of rifaximin a month as our first step after inulin. We did that for 3 or 4 months, and we realized that there was no improvement. So we'd seen him. Now we're in November 2021. We put him on twice daily, nonstop rifaximin. He's also on fish oil and olive oil. At this point, and again, we don't use extra vitamins. There's no special diets. We don't do any of that stuff. And I see the parents then a few months later. And so we're now about March, and he's not improving, and I can't figure out what's going on. There's something off here, and the parents were accidentally only giving rifaximin once a day. It's useless once a day, okay? And I felt bad about that. That's part of my responsibility, is make sure it's very clear to them, but we do give written instructions to everybody when we change the doses or things like that. So that was unfortunate. So we bump them up to twice a day rifaximin as we originally hoped. And when we go from there in the next, about 2-3 months later, we're now got much better eye contact. Responsiveness is better. He's still super hyper with elopement, repetitive questioning and stuff like that. But his elopements were slowing down. They could yell at him and get his attention. He could stop. He could control himself a little bit. So he's still on the same thing. We're seeing him now. So that was April. We're seeing him in September of 22. Still very impulsive, aggressive, hyperactive. And it didn't seem, the parents were saying they thought part of this had slowed down. So what we tried to do was combine his twice a day rifaximin with twice a day inulin. He didn't tolerate that very well, even though the inulin alone he did. So what we're doing here is the rifaximin has an antibiotic effect, and we're using inulin as a prebiotic effect. Which inulin and other prebiotics do is they feed the healthy bacteria that make these acids in the small intestine, and the overgrowing bacteria from the colon don't like that acid, and they'll regress. So we switched him from twice a day inulin rifaximin to, we used a different prebiotic called partially hydrogenated gargum, PHGG. Gargum, you'll see in packaged foods, it's a thickener. You don't want to use old-fashioned gargum. You want partially hydrogenated gargum. It doesn't thicken as much, okay? Because there was, in the 90s, some medical complications of people consuming straight gargum. It can cause actually bowel obstruction, but you don't have that worry with PHGG. So we put him on the PHGG, and then within 3 months, aggression substantially lessened. I'm actually reading from the notes right here. Comprehension, expressive language are starting to improve. Only time it will drop off when he's hungry or sleepy. There we go. We don't change anything. We bump forward. Hyperactivity continues to lessen, can now sit during a full meal, 10 or 15 minutes. That's a great sign, because if you're sitting still, you aren't using your muscles to drive blood pressure to your head. Your nervous system has to do it. So it's showing that he went from not being able to eat, basically it was 1 or 2 bites and he'd have to run around, to now he could sit for 10 or 15 minutes and finish his meal. Okay. Aggressive episodes are now only maybe once every 2 weeks. He's able to control. There's no more elopement, following 2 to 3 step directions 80-90% of the time. He is now speaking his language. He'd been in this very repetitive loop of just words where it was just nonsensical. And through the whole time, his speech is starting to grow and grow. And by this point, he is fully conversational in English. Socially, he's finally become comfortable around children he's not familiar with. So this kind of social pathway of learning what safety is and who is safe. First, the kids are comfortable with mom, the dad, then familiar children. So that might be siblings or cousins that are in the house a lot, or a small group of kids they're familiar with in school. Then you go to unfamiliar adults, and last are unfamiliar kids. So he's finally crossed over, is feeling comfortable. He can now approach, kids he's never met before at the park. And then here we are. So now we're up to November 2023. Improvements continue, academically catching up to his peers. Still occasionally anxious. Loud noises at times might trigger some crying, but no more negative aggressive stuff like hitting or elopement, stuff like that. And teachers are very impressed with his advancement. And then we last saw him this past spring, and at this point almost no anxiety or aggression at all, maybe once a month and only outside the home. Able to focus and academically continuing to catch up to his peers, speaking in full sentences, ask questions appropriately. Dinner is now, I got here 15 plus minutes. That's basically how long it takes him to eat, so he can sit there and eat a whole meal. And when I put that, that's without an iPad, that's without some distractor, okay? School continues to be impressed, quickly learning multiplication, division, and word problems, and his constipation, which had been an issue in the past, is now fully recovered. He's not neurotypical yet, but at this point, he's only 13. Okay, we go from, he starts when he's 5. I see him when he's 8.5. He's now 13. We're really close. I think a couple more years of just kind of learning how to interact with other kids. Like, what are the rules of playing? What are the subtle rules of conversation? With conversation, you have to learn, like, you can't blather on about one topic all the time. You got to shut up at times. You got to let other people talk. If they're talking about something you aren't particularly interested in, you kind of are nice about it. You don't tell them to shut up, and you hang in there. So he's going to learn through this, kind of fine tune all this stuff. I'm pretty sure by high school he'll be as neurotypical as any other kid. Okay, that's what happens. That's how much recovery you can get. And it's all about reducing inflammation. It's not about, toxic buildup. It's not about heavy metals. It's not about yeast. It's predominantly about inflammation, preventing the brain from normally developing. And if you reduce the inflammation, these kids are magical in what they can do. And if you're on the protocol, or if you're a therapist or a physician out there and you're watching this and you're having trouble, it's like they aren't advancing. If they aren't advancing, that means you got too much inflammation. And always look to the intestinal tract. Okay? In this case, we had a problem. Monthly didn't work. We did continuous. The parents were accidentally doing it once a day. We tried combination with rifaximin and inulin, which previously tolerated inulin, but now with rifaximin doesn't tolerate it. I don't know why. It happens sometimes. So we dump out the inulin, use a different prebiotic. Bingo. Boom. Okay? So this is a great case, illustrates several different points, and get out there and start taking care of these kids. Have a good one. Bye.